Hi and welcome back. In this video we're looking at relative imports. Relative imports seem to be more trouble than it's worth in Python because a lot of people don't know how they work. It's not something that's talked about all that often, and there's a few things you have to know about Python in order to make use of relative imports successfully. Generally though, I'll say relative imports are probably not worth doing because of their limitations. Let's talk about them. In the last video, we looked at the file operations file that we've got here with two functions, save to file and read file. And in our app.py, when we wanted to import it, we did from utils dot, that opens up this package, utils, file operations, that opens up the file operations file, import these two functions. When we import a file, like we say do this, Python goes to the file, it navigates to it, and it runs it, and then it gives us access to the functions that were defined in it. So if we have print, if we have print hello inside file operations, and then we go back to app and we run app.py, notice how we get hello printed out. Because again, when you import the file, this goes to this file and runs it. It defines the functions, it doesn't run the functions. It defines the functions, it runs any code that's in there, and then at the end it goes back and it gives you access to those things that you imported. What Python is doing in the background is essentially constructing a dictionary of name of function to the function contents, and that's really what it's giving you back, and then you can use them as functions there. So the file runs when you import it. That's something that's important to know. So what we've done up here is an absolute import. We've started at the top of our project, inside the imports project folder, that's the utils package, that's at the very top. We've accessed that, then we've accessed the file operations, and that's called an absolute import because we've defined the absolute path of imports. If we had inside utils a new package called, for example, common, this is a pretty common package name, and we move file operations into there, remember to uncheck search for references. Now we get this unknown file, it cannot resolve it. So what we have to do is utils.common.file operations. We're accessing the utils package, then the common package inside of that, and then the file operations file inside of that. And then we can import from it. This again is an absolute import. Notice how we start at the level of app.py in every instance, but that's a side effect. The important thing is that we start at the top of our project. Okay. So what if we had something like this? Let's create a new file inside utils, a new Python file. Notice inside utils, not inside common. And I'm going to call this find.py. And in this file, I'm going to put a function that will find a particular element inside a list. So let's say find in is going to take in an iterable, it's going to take in a finder function, and it's going to take an expected value. And then it's just going to say for I in iterable, if finder I equal expected, finder I, return I. Otherwise, we're going to raise a not found error and say expected, not found in provided iterable. Of course, we have to create such an error, and you know how to do that. Create this not found error inside this class. I'm sure you managed. All to do is say class not found error extends from exception and doesn't do anything since we don't have any extra arguments other than the message there. Now we've got this find function here. And again, if we go to app.py, we can import it. And you'd know how to import it as well from utils.find import find in. And then this allows us to find in a particular list. If we are in find.py and we wanted to get access to the file operations for some reason, this is just an example, then there are two ways of doing it. there are 3 ways that people normally try, 2 ways which are correct, and 1 way which is wrong, and this is the wrong way. This is the wrong way of doing it, okay? So do not do this. You'd think that because we are currently in find.py, which is inside utils, we'd just be able to say from common.fileoperations import save to file. And this makes sense in the majority of languages. But really what's happening here is that Python thinks that we are doing an absolute import because we've not told it otherwise, and therefore we have to start at the top of our project. So the only correct way of doing this is utils.common.fileoperations, and it likes that. Another option is to tell Python that we want to start from the current folder, the utils folder. Then we can do that by removing the utils, but keeping the dot. And what this now means is reasonably inconsistent with the rest of the usage of dots in Python, but it means inside the current folder. So in the current folder, common, in common file operations. And this is now a relative import. A relative import is an import that starts from the current file, or the current file that we're working with, and it can go down to another package there. So all this is good, but there are a few problems. Here's the first problem. Let's run find.py. Not so good. We get a module not found error when we run find.py. Okay, we will talk about this in just a moment. I wanted to show you why this is not such a good idea in the majority of cases. But if you run app.py, it all works. Notice how app.py is importing find, and that is running find, which means that this code here is running too. And it's working when we do that. It's working when we run app.py, but it's not working when we run find.py. And that is that thing I was talking about earlier about running a file as a script versus as a module. There's just a couple of differences in there. So, let's talk about exactly why this doesn't work when we run find.py and why it works when we run app.py. And to do that, we have to talk about the dunder name variable. So I'm going to remove the actual code that we're using we don't really care about it anymore. But what I'm going to do is print __name __. I'm going to print __name __ for app.py. Do you know the value that this is going to have? I don't expect you to, but the value is __main __. So there's a dunder main name. Whenever you run a file as a script, that is, whenever you run anything, like app.py or find.py or fileoperations.py, then __name __ of that file is always going to be __main __. So the main is always the name of the file you've ran. So that's an important thing. Let's go over to find.py then and print its name. What do you think this is going to be when we run app.py? We're going to run app.py. What do you think we're going to see printed out? I hope you thought about it or maybe even ran the code so I can show you exactly what's going on. First of all, we get utils.find because I said that when you import, you run the file. So this file operations file runs first, and then utils.find runs second. Then we print out this name here. So utils.find runs first here, and we print the name at the very bottom. And the name now is utils.find. And that's because that's what we imported, utils.find. So Python goes over here, finds the file, and now decides that now this file will be called utils.find. Then we print __name __, and this is still main because we ran this file. Let's go over to find.py, And now I'm going to go back to the thing that works, utils.common.fileoperations, and I'm going to run find.py. Notice how we get main, because we ran find.py, and the name of it is always main as it's the file we've ran. Then, if we revert back to running app, and by the way, I've removed the utils there, and we go to common file operations and we print the name here too, let's go back to running app and see what happens. Okay, nothing terribly unexpected. We get main for the app. We get utils.find for find. And somehow we get utils.common.fileoperations for file operations, even though it was imported like so here. Of course, we did also import it up here, so this is the name it's got. Let's remove this import and run app again. Notice how utils.common.fileoperations is still the first file. When we do, let me explain that a wee bit. I was jumping right into something else there. When we import from utils.find, this is the first thing that happens. We go into find, and then we import file operations. So this file operations file is the first one to run to completion. We print out the name, which is utils common file operations. Then we go back to find after the import, and we run through this, and we end up printing out the name, utils.find. And finally, we go back to here and we print the app's name. That's main. As you can see, the file operations name is not .common.fileoperations. It is utils.common.fileoperations, because this full stop here means access the current package in the name. So that's utils. The name of the file is utils.find. When you do a dot at the start, it says get the package utils and access the common package inside of it and the file operations package inside of it. So the end name ends up as utils.common.fileoperations. Now, why does it not work when we run find.py? Again, I'm going to import from here. Why does it not work with the relative import when we run find.py? Well, because the dot is main, and main isn't utils. So then it tries to access __main__.common.fileoperations, and that's not going to work because main is not a package. And this is why relative imports can be a bit of a pain. And indeed, if we run this again, you'll see that we get a no module name main.common, because that's exactly what it's trying to do. It's trying to access the package of this name and just appending it to whatever it is here. Okay. So of course, if find was in another folder, this package could be myproject.utils.common.fileoperations. This would be the find package, and it would all get appended to the start. So whatever it is that find is in is going to get appended at the front, and then it's going to add this at the back. Those two together are going to be the absolute path of file operations. Of course, if you run find as a script, you add main here, which is not valid because that's not a valid package. But this works if you run app.py. And it works because you've now said that find file is inside utils. So when you go into find, the name is utils.find, so what gets appended here is utils. This is what's happening in the background. So this works when you don't run the file as a script. Doesn't work when you do run it as a script. So that's it for relative imports where we're importing children. Remember, the common package here is a child of the utils package where we're currently at. In the next video, let's look at parent imports, how the file operations module can import, for example, this not found error. Let's go there, so I'll see you in just a moment.